Have you ever wondered why a man can look at you as if you are the only thing that exists in the room, yet the very next moment, he retreats behind a wall of silence, pretending indifference as if nothing has ever stirred his soul? There's a reason for that paradox. A silent war between his ego and his shadow. Between what he consciously believes and what he unconsciously desires. In Jungian terms, he is at the mercy of his anima, the inner feminine that both attracts and terrifies him. And when that projection finds a home in you, when he sees in your gaze the reflection of his own unlived tenderness, he begins to orbit you, not as a free man, but as one bound by an invisible gravitational pull. In this strange and magnetic dance, obsession does not wear the face of passion, it hides behind control, detachment, or even arrogance. The man who is secretly obsessed with you is not always the one who showers you with affection. Often, he is the one who withholds it, because to admit how deeply he feels would require him to face the unintegrated parts of himself. The fears he has buried under layers of masculinity and pride. He doesn't understand that what he calls you is, in truth, a mirror of his own soul. He thinks of you at night when the world is quiet, and in that silence, your image slips into his unconscious like a haunting melody. You live there, not as a person, but as an archetype, the one who awakens the forgotten feminine within him. Yet this awakening is too raw, too unsettling. It threatens his carefully built sense of control. So he hides it, he distances himself. He may even act colder, crueler, sharper, but underneath, something primal trembles. The first sign that he is secretly obsessed is the way his energy lingers even when he's gone. You feel him watching without seeing, present without presence. Jung called this the phenomenon of psychic transference, the soul's way of communicating through silence. He might not say it, but the atmosphere between you changes when he enters the room. His defenses rise like armor. Yet his eyes betray him. They follow you in flashes, never resting too long, as if your very existence pulls on something ancient inside him that he cannot name. The second sign lives in his contradictions. He will oscillate between approach and avoidance, warmth and withdrawal. One day, he seems drawn toward you, craving your presence, your voice, your approval. Next, he disappears behind an emotional fog, pretending not to care. This push and pull is not random, it's the struggle between his conscious mind, which fears losing control, and his unconscious, which longs for union. The deeper his obsession, the more violently he resists it. Because to love you would mean to surrender, to admit that his carefully sculpted persona is not as impenetrable as he wants the world to believe. He may rationalize it. He may tell himself you're just another woman, that he's too busy, too disciplined, too focused for such distractions. But his behavior betrays him. He remembers the most minor details about you. The way your tone shifts when you laugh. The subtle rhythm of your breathing. The scent that lingers in the air after you leave. He notices what others don't. Because his attention is no longer his own. It belongs to you. And yet, he will never confess this, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of annihilation. Fear that loving you means losing the self he has built. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This man calls it a coincidence that he keeps running into you. He calls it curiosity when he checks your social media at midnight, scrolling through your photos as if deciphering sacred text. But it is not a coincidence. And it is not curiosity, it is the pull of the unconscious. The magnetic field of projection drawing him toward what his psyche needs for growth. In you, he sees not just beauty, but confrontation, the chance to meet the parts of himself he has long denied. And yet, you too are not untouched by this energy. When a man projects his anima onto you, you may begin to feel the echo of his fascination as if it were your own. You start to sense him even in his absence, to dream of him without reason, to feel your emotions shift in rhythm with his unspoken desire. It is not merely romance, it is psychological alchemy. You have entered a field of transformation. His obsession, though secret, is an initiation, for both of you, into the mysteries of shadow and soul. But beware, for what is projected can never be possessed. He does not yet see you, the real you. He sees the reflection of what his unconscious needs to reconcile, his vulnerability, his longing for tenderness, and his fear of being exposed. That is why his words may sound distant while his energy feels consuming. It is not love yet, it is hunger for integration. He is drawn to you because his soul senses completion. And yet his ego fights against it with every breath. At times, this may leave you confused. Caught between feeling desired and disregarded. You might question your intuition, wondering if the connection is real or imagined. However, the truth is that his silence often speaks louder than his words. He may not reach out, but his energy clings. He may act cold, but his avoidance is saturated with emotion. Jung would say his shadow is at work, the hidden parts of his psyche trying to merge with consciousness through you. He runs not from you, but from the mirror you hold up to his soul. And perhaps, beneath the surface, you already know this. You feel it in the way his absence burns just as strongly as his presence. You sense that his detachment is an act of protection, not rejection, because to admit that he is obsessed would unravel him. It would expose the hollowness beneath his control. It would force him to confront the truth, that what he desires in you is the very essence he has long abandoned within himself. This is the paradox of male obsession under Jung's lens. It is not purely romantic but symbolic. The psyche attempts to unite opposites, to reclaim balance between the masculine and feminine within. When a man becomes secretly obsessed, it is not merely attraction, it is a summons from his own depths. And though he may never speak it, his every silence hums with the vibration of what he cannot suppress. He will think of you while denying it. He will speak of you indirectly, in stories and metaphors, disguising meaning behind jokes. He might even criticize you, trying to break the spell. Yet his words betray the tremor beneath them, the pulse of fascination he cannot extinguish. It is in his pauses, in the way his gaze hesitates before looking away, in the tension of unspoken longing that stretches between you like invisible silk. Somewhere deep inside, he knows, you are the mirror his soul has chosen, but he is not ready to see. There comes a moment when the silence between two people becomes its own kind of language, a language older than words, older than reason. In that silence, something within him trembles. He feels your energy like a vibration through his bones. And though he tries to bury it under logic, routine, and distraction, it always returns. You exist inside him as a presence that defies containment. Every time he suppresses it, the unconscious pushes back with greater force, demanding recognition. This is not mere attraction, it is the psyche's rebellion against denial. The third sign that he is secretly obsessed with you lies in the way he tries to control the narrative between the two of you. He may appear detached, even dismissive, yet he subtly manipulates the emotional distance, ensuring that he remains both close enough to feel your warmth and far enough to deny vulnerability. Jung might call this the dance between the persona and the shadow, the face he shows the world versus the self he hides in darkness. His obsession is both the wound and the mask that covers it. He cannot admit to how much he feels, so he constructs scenarios where he appears in control, sending short messages, making calculated replies, and maintaining measured silences. But beneath each act of restraint is a storm of emotion he can neither name nor master. You can see it in his eyes when he looks at you, how they soften for a second before turning cold, how his body leans closer before he forces it back. He is fighting an invisible battle, torn between the desire to surrender and the fear of exposure. To him, you are the forbidden reflection of his vulnerability. And in the strange logic of the unconscious, what he resists becomes what he cannot stop thinking about. The more he denies it, the more it consumes him. This is the nature of repression. Jung once said that what you resist not only persists, it grows. His obsession is the direct consequence of his own refusal to feel. Like a river dammed too tightly, the emotion builds pressure beneath the surface, finding new and unexpected ways to spill through. Sudden bursts of irritation when he sees you speak to another man. Defensiveness when your name is mentioned. Unexpected kindness that feels both tender and unfinished. He is constantly oscillating between fascination and fear, desire and withdrawal. It is the soul's tug of war for integration. The fourth sign appears not in his words or actions but in his energy of avoidance. He will avoid you not because you mean nothing to him, but because you mean too much. He avoids the places you frequent, then finds himself circling back to them as if guided by invisible strings. He avoids your eyes but remembers every color they reflect. He avoids conversation but listens for your voice in the crowd. This is the paradox of the obsessed man. He hides from the very thing he is magnetized toward. To him, you are both salvation and danger. The embodiment of what he has suppressed within himself: tenderness, surrender, emotion. He fears you because he fears what he becomes in your presence: unguarded, human, alive. In your presence, the persona cracks, the armor begins to fracture. And through those fissures, the truth seeps out. His laughter around you is different, unpracticed, almost startled. His body betrays him, the tightening of the jaw, the fleeting glance, the subtle shift of posture when you move closer. You might catch him watching you when he thinks you're not looking, only for him to avert his eyes with the sharpness of someone caught by his own reflection. This is not a coincidence. This is the unconscious revealing itself through body language, through the tension between what he wants to hide and what the soul insists on expressing. And yet, the most telling sign of his obsession may not lie in his presence but in his reaction to your absence. When you withdraw your energy, when you stop reaching out, something in him collapses inward. He becomes restless, unfocused, haunted by a strange emptiness he cannot explain. He might seek distractions, work, other women, noise, but none of it fills the void. Because it was never about you as a person, it was about what you awakened within him. Your withdrawal confronts him with the truth that what he thought he could control has begun to control him. In this moment, the psyche demands reckoning. He faces the mirror, and for the first time, the mask no longer fits. The woman who becomes the object of this kind of obsession is not powerless. In fact, she stands at the threshold of enormous spiritual influence, if she knows her worth. She represents the anima, the inner feminine that the man must integrate if he ever wishes to be whole. But this power is dangerous if misunderstood. If she seeks validation from his obsession, she becomes trapped in the same projection that binds him. She becomes the mirror, not the woman. Her freedom lies not in his attention but in her awareness of what it signifies: that she has awakened a sleeping archetype within another's soul. So, what happens when she withdraws her light? When she refuses to play the role of the projection, something remarkable occurs. The man is left alone with his shadow. And for the first time, he begins to confront himself. This confrontation can be painful. It may manifest as anger, denial, or despair, but it is also the beginning of a transformative process. The moment he stops running from what she symbolizes, he begins the journey toward individuation. He learns that the love he feels for her was always a coded message from his unconscious, a signal pointing him toward his own unlived emotional truth. To understand this is to reclaim power. The woman who sees this dynamic clearly no longer feels confused by his hot and cold behavior, his emotional contradictions, or his silence. She understands that his obsession says more about his internal world than about her worth. She becomes the witness, not the participant, in his inner drama. And from that awareness, she rises, no longer reacting, no longer chasing clarity from someone lost in his own shadow. In the realm of Jungian psychology, such relationships serve a sacred purpose. They are not meant to last, they are intended to spark a lasting impression. They force both the man and the woman to meet the parts of themselves that remain unconscious. His obsession is not love yet, it is the prelude to it. A psychic storm preparing the soil for deeper self-understanding. For the woman, it is the test of self-possession. Will she lose herself in his projections? Or will she hold her center and allow the storm to pass? The truth is, every obsession hides a valuable lesson. And in this lesson, both souls are being called towards something higher, something that transcends the hunger for possession or validation. It is the path of consciousness itself, the journey from shadow to light. And when she understands this, she no longer takes his obsession personally. She can look into his eyes and see the boy hiding behind the man, the fear behind the mask, the yearning beneath the pride. She understands that he is not her savior nor her enemy, he is her mirror. And in that understanding, she becomes free. Freedom begins the moment she stops trying to decode him, when she no longer waits for his confession, when she no longer confuses his silence with rejection or his detachment with disinterest. She begins to reclaim her own reflection from the projection he placed upon her. For so long, she has carried the invisible weight of his obsession, feeling its gravity even when he was absent, sensing its pull in the quiet corners of her mind. But now, the current shifts. What once felt like a haunting begins to dissolve, revealing not a loss, but a revelation. He, too, begins to unravel. The absence of her energy exposes the vacuum within him. All the feelings he had buried, longing, tenderness, vulnerability, come rushing to the surface, no longer contained by denial. In Jungian language, this is the confrontation with the shadow. The moment when the psyche must face everything it has exiled. The man who was once composed and detached begins to feel the chaos of his own soul. He dreams of her, sometimes vividly, sometimes in symbols. She appears as water, as light, as the unreachable horizon. Each dream is the unconscious speaking to him, reminding him of what he has lost, or perhaps, of what he has yet to integrate. It is at this point that obsession reveals its true face, not love, but longing for wholeness. He was never truly obsessed with her, not the woman herself. With her flaws, freedom, and individuality, but with what she represented. She was the bridge to his inner world, the feminine principle he had ignored in himself. To love her would have meant to honor his own emotional depth. His softness, his intuition, qualities the world had taught him to suppress. But instead, he projected them onto her, worshipped them in her, desired to possess them through her. And when she pulled away, that borrowed wholeness was ripped from him, leaving him face to face with the emptiness he had tried to fill through her. This is the night of the masculine soul, the moment when the man who cannot admit his obsession begins to crumble under its weight. His defenses no longer protect him, they imprison him. His pride becomes heavy, his silence suffocating. Yet within this collapse lies the seed of transformation. For when the ego breaks, the soul can finally breathe. The wise woman, the one who has already walked through her own shadow, does not gloat in his unraveling. She knows the pain of self-confrontation, the burning that precedes rebirth. She knows that no one escapes the mirror of love unscathed. She does not chase him, but neither does she harden her heart. Instead, she holds her own light steady, like a lantern on the path, not for him to follow, but to remind herself of where she stands, because her worth is not defined by whether he returns or not. Her worth was never his to measure. And yet, something miraculous can happen when the woman remains grounded in her power. In the silence of her absence, his projection begins to fade. Slowly, painfully, he starts to see her, not as the archetype of his anima, not as the reflection of his unlived softness, but as a real, sovereign being. It is a moment both humbling and sacred. The fog of obsession lifts, and in its place, clarity dawns. He realizes that the love he felt for her was not an illusion, it was real. But it was incomplete. It was love without consciousness. And now, the task is to make it whole. In Jungian individuation, this moment marks the beginning of the integration process. The man who once projected the feminine outward begins to turn inward, to listen to the voice he had ignored, the one that whispers through intuition, through emotion, through stillness. He may meditate, write, or walk in solitude. He may grieve the image he had created of her. And through that grief, he begins to meet himself. The woman, once the center of his longing, becomes the catalyst for his awakening. But for her, the woman who has been the object of his silent obsession, the journey is equally profound. She learns the difference between being desired and being seen. She knows that fascination without emotional depth is not love, and that no amount of someone's obsession can make up for their inability to meet her soul. She learns that her energy is sacred, that her presence holds power, and that not every connection must be nurtured. Some are meant to be released, serving as mirrors rather than homes. In her release, she finds herself again, no longer bound by the need to be understood, no longer waiting for validation from a man still trapped in his unconscious. She begins to live with a more profound sense of sovereignty. Her self-worth becomes quiet and unwavering, not built on admiration but on awareness. The same magnetism that once drew him in now becomes her strength, a field of energy directed inward, fueling her purpose, her art, her truth. The man, watching from afar, may feel both awe and sorrow. He senses that the woman he once tried to possess has transcended the need for his recognition. And that is what makes her even more powerful, and paradoxically, even more magnetic. But she no longer exists to feed the projection. She has stepped beyond the polarity of his desire and resistance, into the stillness of self-knowledge. It is here, in this sacred neutrality, that love can finally become real, not the kind born of obsession or lack, but of consciousness and choice. The man who integrates his shadow learns to approach her not as an idol or an escape, but as an equal. The woman who has reclaimed her reflection meets him not as a mirror but as a being complete unto herself. And if their paths cross again, it will no longer be a dance of projection, but a union of awareness. For Jung, this is the highest form of connection, when two individuated souls meet without seeking completion, because they already are whole. Until then, every obsession, every longing, every heartbreak serves as the crucible of transformation. It is the fire through which both the masculine and feminine are refined. So if you ever feel the pull of someone who cannot admit their obsession, remember this. Their silence speaks not of rejection but of the inner storm they must face alone. You were never meant to fix them, only to awaken them, and in doing so, you, too, awaken. When a woman understands this, she no longer needs to chase, to prove, or to wait. She becomes the calm in the chaos, the witness of her own worth. The man may continue his journey toward self-discovery, or he may remain lost in the labyrinth of his projections, but she is free. Because the woman who knows her value does not need to be desired to feel worthy. She does not need to be understood to realize she is profound. She does not need to be chosen to feel complete. When the story quiets, and the echoes of longing finally fade into the stillness of dawn, something sacred remains, not him, not you, but what was born in the space between. The kind of awakening that no romance could ever promise. The kind that burns illusions until only truth survives. He walks now through the ruins of his own pride. Slower, quieter, more aware. The image he once projected onto you has dissolved, leaving him face to face with the woman as she truly is, and with himself as he truly was. No longer the confident master of emotion, but a man stripped bare before the mirror of his unconscious. He sees that obsession was never love, but the soul's desperate attempt to remember its missing half. He begins to integrate. The same tenderness he once feared now becomes his strength. The empathy he once dismissed as weakness becomes wisdom. For the first time, he feels without resistance, not the dizzying rush of infatuation, but the grounded calm of self-recognition. What he once sought in you, he now cultivates within himself. The obsession that once chained him transforms into reverence, not for possession, but for presence. He begins to understand that love was never meant to consume, but to clarify and illuminate the world. And the woman, luminous in her detachment, sovereign in her stillness, has long since stepped beyond the orbit of his psyche. She moves differently now, with a grace born of knowing her own depth. Her boundaries are not walls but temples, sacred spaces where only truth may enter. No longer defined by being the mirror of another soul, she becomes the mirror of her own divine essence. She no longer searches for meaning through his gaze, she carries it within her pulse. This is what Jung called the process of individuation, the alchemy of becoming whole. Every connection that broke her heart, every silence that unsettled her, every obsession that bound her, was but the fire that forged her consciousness. In transcending her projection, she did not lose love, she became it. And perhaps, one day, he will meet her again, not to resume the old dance, but to bow in silent gratitude. For it was through her that he discovered the voice of his own soul. And perhaps she will smile, not out of nostalgia, but recognition, for it was through him that she learned the sacred art of letting go. Because in the end, the purpose of such entanglements is not to keep two people bound, but to awaken them both. The obsession, the silence, the ache, all of it was the psyche's language, urging each soul to return home to itself. Once that lesson is learned, the need for attachment dissolves, leaving behind a quiet knowing that real love begins only where the hunger for validation ends. So now, when she feels a man's gaze linger, when she senses the silent pull of his fascination, she no longer trembles. She sees what it is, the stirring of the unconscious, the mirror of the anima calling him toward wholeness. She offers compassion, but not captivity, presence, but not permission to drain her light. Because she has learned that the feminine is not the ground for men to find themselves upon. It is the sacred force that reminds them to rise. And when she looks in the mirror, she no longer asks who she is in his eyes. She asks who she has become through her own reflection. The answer comes softly, like breath after long silence. She has become the woman who no longer waits to be seen. And that is the quiet miracle of the journey, that what began as his secret obsession ends as her conscious liberation. Because love, in its most valid form, is not the merging of two incomplete halves. It is the meeting of two complete souls who choose, freely, to walk side by side. And so she walks, not away from him, but toward herself, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, not with haste, but with holiness. The man still watches sometimes, wondering how she became so untouchable, so radiant in her calm, but he does not know that it was his silence that taught her stillness, his resistance that taught her surrender, his obsession that taught her freedom. Now, she lives not to be the reflection of anyone's longing, but to embody the fullness of her own. Her heart beats not in pursuit, but in presence. Her love no longer asks to be earned, it simply is. And if the universe should ever weave its paths again, it will not be as the dreamer and the dreamed, the seeker and the sought. It will be as if two souls have met their own shadows and returned carrying light. He walks now not as the conqueror he once imagined himself to be, but as the pilgrim. The man who once tried to possess her now learns the language of reverence. He begins to understand that love is not ownership, it is a state of awareness. He starts to see that his obsession was never about her body, her voice, or her mystery. It was about the lost fragments of his own soul reaching out to be reclaimed. The anima. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of integration. And the woman, once the silent recipient of his unconscious hunger, has become something even more extraordinary. She is no longer the reflection of anyone's desire, but the embodiment of her own divine equilibrium. She has walked through the corridors of projection and emerged radiant, centered, and awake. Her solitude is no longer loneliness, it is a sacred space. She no longer confuses attention with affection, or obsession with devotion. She has learned that love does not demand performance, it invites presence. In her stillness, she feels the ancient rhythm of the feminine, the pulse of creation, destruction, renewal. She now understands that to be a woman is not to be chosen, but to choose, to open her heart, not because she needs to be seen, but because she knows what it means to see. The woman who has walked through projection becomes the embodiment of compassion, fierce, luminous, untouchable. Some nights, she may still feel the echo of him, not the man, but the memory of that mirror. Yet the ache no longer binds, it blesses. It reminds her of how deeply she has lived, how courageously she has learned to let go because what she released was not him, but the version of herself that once needed to be understood by another to feel real. And somewhere, in another silence, he too remembers her, not as a possession, but as a symbol. She was the mirror that cracked his mask. She was the flame that burned away the illusions of control. She was the call that led him back to his own soul. Now, if they ever meet again, it will not be as lovers seeking completion, but as witnesses to one another's evolution. Their eyes may meet, not with yearning, but with peace. They will recognize the alchemy that took place in their separation. She became her own source of light, and he became humble enough to honor it. This is the essence of all great connections. They do not bind, they awaken. They are not meant to last, they are intended to transform. The soul does not seek comfort in them, but consciousness. Because ultimately, every obsession is the psyche's coded invitation to awaken, and every heartbreak is its sacred initiation into wholeness. The universe uses the language of desire to draw us toward what we have not yet reconciled. The ones we cannot forget are often the ones who remind us of what we have not yet remembered about ourselves. And when remembrance arrives, love becomes something quieter, less about fire, more about light. It no longer screams, "I need you." It whispers, "I see you." That is the moment when obsession dies and true intimacy begins. For him, the lesson was humility. For her, sovereignty. For both, awareness. The dance ends not in tragedy, but in transcendence. Because in the final truth, love is not a pursuit. It is a state of being. The man who has made peace with his anima no longer needs to possess, he protects. He honors, he cherishes. The woman who has met her shadow no longer needs to be chosen, she embodies choice itself. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful reconciliation of all, when the masculine and feminine within each soul finally bow to one another. No longer enemies, no longer projections, but partners in the eternal work of becoming whole. The woman walks now beneath a calm sky. The wind carries whispers of what once was. But she smiles, not with nostalgia, but with knowing. She has become the archetype of her own freedom, the muse of her own becoming, the embodiment of the truth every awakened woman eventually learns. That the love which once haunted her was never meant to cage her, it was meant to crown her. Because the woman who understands her worth does not chase. She does not beg. She does not wait. She chooses. And in that choice, the universe kneels.